What is up YouTube, and welcome to this The Boys video. We had a huge episode this week full of backstory and even featuring one of the best characters from the comics and a nice little Easter egg there, and that is of course Love Sausage. I think this may be my favourite episode yet, but I feel like I'm saying that each week as I adore each episode. There will be spoilers in the video for the episode, so be warned here should you not want any spoilers. And we open with some long-wanted backstory for Frenchie. We flash back 8 years as Frenchie explaining how the only thing that kept him company was the Golden Girls, and how he is the Betty White of the group and they made their own family like he did. Now he's with a group here, of course he's with Sherry, who we've met in a couple of episodes, and we have a new friend as well here, and he plans to rob a bank with them and genuinely seems to be getting up to all sorts of mischief and has made a bomb which he uses on supers like Behemoth, and it was weaponized Xanax which he used to calm down the super so the super couldn't use his powers. He is very ingenious there, to be honest, but he and his friends get caught and Mallory comes to him with an offer. Obviously she is impressed with his skills at taking down supers and cuts him a deal. She offers to free his friends, or not at least put them in the worst jail in America, and he instantly takes the deal. He's crazy, but he cares about his friends more than anything in the world. And I do hope we get more of his comic book backstory of him jousting baguettes. Yes, you heard that right. And it would be nice to see more of that. But Homelander and Stormfront are still an item, and they hunt down a criminal, and they say how the justice system is broken, as the criminal will be going free the next day, and Stormfront mentions that with everyone filming with their phones, law enforcement can't do their jobs. Yes, the criminal justice system is broken, Stormfront, but not for people like you. Of course, this is a reference to high-profile cases like George Floyd, where justice only had a chance as the brutality by the police was being filmed. They both get off on torturing the criminal, and Homelander blows up the guy's head with his own hands, and this is the strangest metaphor I've ever seen for blowing one's load I have ever seen. The boys are keenly watching an interview between the pair, and Billy and Kimiko realise that something's going on, and yes, these two are definitely doing the horizontal jogging there. I hope that they explore this a bit more, with Billy using this as a weapon to take down Homelander, but despite being stood up later in the episode by Stormfront, Homelander did buy her flowers, but he absolutely goes Kyle and not only punches the drywall, but blows up his entire trailer. Starlight is able to come to the boys' base after having her tracking chip cut out by Frenchie, and drops the info that Stormfront and Stan have been exchanging emails about Sage Grove and how they are close to a breakthrough. This was the same place that Lamplighter was calling her from, and seems to be key to Vought creating an army of supes, which we will discuss a bit later in the video. Starlight is invited on a mission to go to Sage Grove and find out just what Vought have been creating. But of course, Billy has only invited her as she is collateral damage, and if the SHIT hits the fan, then Vought will go after her instead of them, especially as she's cut out her chip. And there was a running gag throughout the episode with the handler of the Seven wondering where the hell she even is. He clearly still doesn't trust her, as later in the episode he had his gun trained on her, the same thing he did last season when she also mentioned that a 50 cal hit her in the chest. Maeve's plan continues with a deep, and it turns out she's trying to get the black box from the plane crash last season. And it's interesting, as I've recently reread the comics, and all this to do was actually originally was 9/11, so it's interesting how they've updated there, and I think it works better here. And the Deep only manages to find a GoPro, which he had help from his friendly fish, and this was some footage that the passengers made, and he seems incredibly eager to join the Seven once again, and Maeve says don't tell anyone. But the footage, well, it weirdly implicates her as well. She says she's going to go to CNN, and this seems to be sort of an insurance policy, less of a going out there and kind of explicitly kind of blackmailing. But it pops up later as Elena finds the footage and becomes disgusted. Maeve has been made to be a sympathetic character in the last few episodes, but in reality she's just as bad as the rest, and she was very bad in the comics as well, and she didn't even stand up to Homelander when they could have gone and got help. Now, something similar happens in the comics where she helps the boys spy on the Seven, only to meet her demise. But everyone's favourite soft drink here, Fresca, returns as a Deep tries to become inconspicuous, but he doesn't really do a good job here on the set of the movie, and meets A-Train, who is hilariously getting his own theme tune, and the Deep sees the chance to recruit A-Train to the Church of the Collective, and later in the episode they go to dinner with the leader. The leader knows all about A-Train's debt, heart problems, and compound-free withdrawal. It's how they've managed to recruit the Deep, who was actually a lot easier to recruit, but Shockwave will be getting the same name as A-Train, and it will be a legacy character there. Much like when Wally West obviously took over Barry Allen's mantle as the Flash, and I'm not sure if they did that with Marathon Man, but, well, we'd never really heard much of him just yet. And I expect the leader to turn up later, and Fresca will continue to flow as more supes are recruited to the Church of the Collective. The boys and Starlight go to Sage Grove, with Billy, Starlight and Huey hanging back, waiting to infiltrate it as Stormfront turns up. Now, it turns out, as we found out later in the episode, Stormfront has been running this whole facility from the shadows and has been able to keep it hidden and working with Stan, as not only does she have carte blanche as a soup, but she was actually, as we found out at the end of the episode, born in 1919 in Berlin and was the first successful Compound V experiment, and later married Vought himself, cementing her position there. In the comics, Stormfront was actually male and part of the Hitler Youth, but here she was a kind of bride of Vought, and no doubt came to America with him when he defected to the United States and went on to create Soldier Boy. Sage Grove is a facility that is used to create an army of supes to fulfill what Hitler wanted and cement white people in power, which is pretty much what she was saying here. She's essentially wanted to make her own Aryan race super soldiers, just like Hitler did with the horrible breeding programs of the SS. She sees Homelander as the leader, as he's a strapping blonde lad. He is what Vought wanted to create, but I still think she knows too much about his origins. We know Homelander has no idea of his lineage at all, and I think we will see more of this creation. The crew head into the facility only to find some fun Easter eggs with a character from the comics called Love Sausage, who was a Russian superhero in their version of the Soviet 7 and had a great arc in the comics and even helped take down Stormfront with the rest of the boys. But here his well-endowed nature is admired by Mother's Milk, giving him the name Love Sausage, which we see far too much of later in the episode when he does try to strangle Mother's Milk and he later appears to be knocked out. And I do hope we get to see a decent comic book origin from him as well, as he's one of the best characters. But for now he seems to be just an experiment, but I'd imagine a lot of these people actually have their own backstories as well. Stormfront is getting adults injected with Compound V so they can create instant soups. The boys in the comics injected a small amount of V into them, giving them powers just for a few days. So I think this may actually happen in the show as we see this progress, as they've got all the information and they can see how to do this themselves. But they then see Lamplighter burn someone, as it turns out he is alive after going off-grid and retiring from the Seven. In the comics, he's insane and actually dead, but a Compound V zombie. He was shot by Mallory as he was handed over to her and the CIA, as well as the boys, by the Seven, as a peace offering after he killed the grandkids. But here in the show, he had no idea the grandchildren were there, and he just wanted to kill Mallory. We see her pull the gun on him, but clearly he's more valuable alive. The group head through the facility, they steal hard drives, but just like the meme I post on Twitter, Lamplighter recognises Frenchie, leading to a mass breakout which Cindy started. Cindy isn't at first pass a character from the show, but these characters with weird mutations reminded me heavily of the G-Men from the comics. They were an X-Men knockoff that were actually wiped out by Vought as they were close to being found out by the public and also creating a public scandal affecting Vaught's money. So I really do like that, and I think that would be an interesting move forward for them. Lamplighter is forced to team up with the rest of the boys as we learn that Frenchie tailed Lamplighter but abandoned his task as his friend was about to OD. Mallory had dirt on Lamplighter in a great flashback scene and wanted to use his dirt on him to convince him to get dirt from the Seven. But he had other ideas and thought he was burning Mallory to stop this happening, but he was so ashamed he never told anyone, not even the Seven. But I think that Vought knew this. I think they found out, leading him to work at Sage Grove to burn the evidence as some sort of penance for what he did, just like, of course, he was left there in a facility and he was forced to kind of live out his days of just being a husk and throwing his own feces. I love the scene where he walks in full costume only to get roasted, no pun intended, by the boys. Meanwhile, poor Huey is damaged by an escaped prisoner who actually damaged his Huey, leading Billy to try and steal a car, only for Starlight having to defuse the situation. However, it's a stand your ground state and she ends up killing the bystander. It's interesting as she got her blood here, and in the comics you wouldn't remember the boys until you've actually killed someone, so she seems to actually have some respect from Billy now as she's kind of blooded in, so to speak. Stormfront arrives at the hospital and Lamplighter thinks on his feet as the rest manage to escape, and like I said, they get to Mallory and she almost gets her revenge, but Lamplighter quite clearly seems remorseful by all of what has happened and he never intended for it. So Homelander knows all about Stormfront's backstory, and it will be interesting to see what happens with this story, and I hope we learn more about it and see more of Homelander's origin too, the real origin of how he was planned and created. Because of course, it's interesting because he never seems to be outwardly racist, he's just an absolute douchebag and a horrible person. It'll be interesting to see how he would sell his soul in this way. Cindy is now alive and is out, and she seems spiritually the same as the G-Men story where she is a smoking gun and she's very powerful and now on the run. So I just cannot wait to see her meet Billy as she seemingly dislikes both sides of the war, so to speak. It will be interesting to see where she pops up next. But that's it for this video. Please do drop a like down below and please do subscribe with notifications on, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.